Hi, everybody. This is Mike Jackson. Welcome to IAML's Timely Alert, the Zika virus frequently asked questions for employers. We're joined today by Gavin Appleby from Littler Mendelson. Gavin has been an instructor with the Institute for Applied Management Law for over 20 years, and he teaches the Certificate in Employee Relations Law course with us, as well as the Certificate in Investigations course. Gavin, thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to hand this over to you.
Happy to do it, Mike, and thanks for the introduction. Greetings, everybody. The hottest item of the day is the new Zika virus issue. For what it's worth, by the way, the Zika is not new. It's actually been around since the 40s, but it's mostly been in Asia and Africa, and it's now moved into parts of South America and the Caribbean. And the real issue is it's become a lot more known than it was and seems to be a lot more risk from people traveling from the U.S. to those countries. There is currently it's either 12 or 14 countries that are banned. If you need information specifically, I shouldn't say banned, sorry, that are affected and have been sent out as a warning by the CDC. If you need some information, by the way, about this that's not on the PowerPoint, go to the CDC's website. It's a very good place to gather data on this, and CDC does a really great job of updating that data. But with all that in mind, I'd like to at least give you what's there, see if I can talk you through two important pieces. What is this and why are people reacting so strongly? And two, what's the employer context to that? Good news on this whole thing, by the way, is this is definitely not Ebola. We're not in the same real risk situations that we were with that. That required a lot of effort by employers to figure out who shouldn't travel and what to do with them when they came back to countries where there were issues. This is nowhere near in that category. It's not the lack of seriousness here. There is definitely some reason for concern. But let me talk you through that. The PowerPoint that you have, we've laid it down by question for question. And so let me just start with the question we get the most of. So how bad is this? What are the symptoms? Good news in that sense. Ebola was potentially deathly, as we all know. This one's not. This one is basically like getting the flu, but probably even milder. It is a virus that does create fever, it does create rash, some joint pain, and oddly enough, conjunctivitis or pink eye. But the real risk, and the reason why it's such a big deal, is the potential birth defect issues that this particular virus carries for pregnant females. And that's the real concern that we've got. Otherwise, this is not something that's going to put people in the hospital. It's not something that's going to put people through great pain. But it is something to worry about, and obviously, like I said, it's the hot item of the day. The real interesting question is, how is it transmitted? You get it through a mosquito bite, and bottom of the line is that there's only a certain kind of mosquito, but good luck trying to figure out which mosquito is which. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you are bitten and that mosquito has got the virus in it, you may well get the virus. It doesn't get transmitted from contact from one person to another person, with some real rare exceptions in mother and newborn situations. The other issue really is, and the interesting one is, we were just now finding out actually that it apparently can move from person to person through blood or bloody fluids contact and sexual activity. I think there are now 2 reported instances of sexual activity situations and the transmission through that. You can't get it from touching objects. You can't get it from touching surfaces. The most common way to get it is a mosquito has it, bites somebody, gives that person the virus. Another mosquito then bites that person and ultimately comes over and bites you, you may get the virus. That's why there's so much discussion out there on mosquito repellent, mosquito protection, and particularly in the countries in question. There is no simple test for it. It's a very complicated analysis. It's not one of those things you can grab a piece of litmus paper and know what you've got. But like I said, most people are not even aware they have it, and only really about 1 out of every 5 people gets it. So moving over to the next page, how long does the virus last? Question number 4 here. Usually a week, sometimes longer. But like I said, there are some people who don't even realize that they have it. It's sort of like just not feeling well. Others get a little bit more of an issue going. So there is that concern sitting out there. But for most people, like I said, this isn't that big a deal. The question is, if you are going to those countries, you need to be a little bit cognizant of what you're doing. There's going to be, quite frankly, it's going to take over aspects of the United States. It's going to be more prevalent. The great news is right now we're not in mosquito season in the U.S., so maybe we'll get a little lucky, but lots of speculation as to what could occur in a worst-case scenario. But again, worst-case scenario is not Ebola. This is not that level of concern. Is there a preventive vaccination? Unfortunately, no, not at this time. That's why we're speaking so much on issues of preventing mosquito bites. In question number 6, what's the big deal? It's like I said, the real big concern is pregnancy, and the real concern is birth defects. It's been a really big issue in Brazil, and there are a number of specific birth defects, the most significant of which is having a child with a smaller head than normal, with a smaller brain than normal. It's a particular type of birth defect that really is related directly to this virus. So the people with real concerns are women, women who are pregnant, women who may be pregnant. One of the biggest potential issues for women is not knowing they're pregnant yet, and that they may be someplace where they do pick up this virus. Travel, in question number 7, is not prohibited at this time. It's just simply a warning to take steps to avoid mosquito bites. Like I said, go to the CDC's website if you want more data on that. Had a couple employers ask already, can we we refuse to let employees travel to those countries, even if it's for vacation? Generally speaking, I would say don't go there at this point. And when I say don't go there, don't go to the point of telling people not to travel to those countries. 1, that's not really the employer's issue. And 2, this isn't so crazy like the Ebola was that you will have problems when that employee comes back. It really shouldn't work that way very often. So I would not be trying to dictate people's personal lives at this point. If the virus somehow gets worse, that's a concern. I also would be in the position, we'll talk about this more in a minute, of letting people know about this. Maybe some education is a good thing. But again, that's mostly going to be directed at the end of the day at employees who are pregnant females. Question number 9, next page on the PowerPoint, is can an employer require a medical examination for an employee who has traveled to those areas before returning to work? And the answer is a very complicated one, but the frank answer is probably not in most cases. The ADA has a lot of limitations on when you can do a fitness for duty or a medical exam, and those limitations are not going to be met in this particular instance, absent something more significant. Again, Ebola was one where we were willing to take that risk under the ADA, but I think if you made someone go through a medical exam because they're coming back from Brazil, I think that's a loser relative to the current status of the law. Number 10, can you impose a quarantine? You don't need to. That isn't how this gets transmitted. Hopefully your employees aren't, I hate to say this, sounds crude, but hopefully no one's having sex at work. Hopefully no one is actually exchanging blood at work. And those two things aside, hopefully this isn't mosquito season, you're not having that problem. So the quarantine doesn't make any sense in this particular situation. So I would not be worried about those issues. There are people that are really worried about this. The American population does a really good job of semi-panic, and there's a little bit of that going on right now. If you are having people travel for work purposes, and I'm now on question number 11, what should employers do with coworkers who are nervous because of travel? You should educate your employees, and really this PowerPoint's a very nice way to do that. It explains the issues pretty effectively. And from that standpoint, transmission risk is low, that agencies are monitoring the issues. I would certainly talk about good mosquito prevention practices, but at the end of the day, I think there's ways to ensure that people feel more comfortable. You do have some duties to keep people safe, but I don't think you're violating OSHA by having people travel to the countries in question. Number 12, does OSHA or any state plans require employers to have a Zika policy? And the answer to that is no. This is all part of the OSHA bloodborne pathogens rule. You are probably already in compliance with that rule. If you need to study up on it, there's a lot on that on the OSHA site. So the answer is you do not need at this point to create something that's different from what you already have. 13, this is the hardest question to me. Should employers refuse to let pregnant employees travel to the affected countries? Very complicated legally. What I can tell you is you're entitled to inform employees about the risk to present females. But if you go farther, one, I would never ask someone if they're pregnant. And secondly is you can't really legally make a decision about their safety, even if you know that they are pregnant. There's a case that was decided a number of years ago by the Supreme Court, and it didn't involve this kind of virus. It involved a woman who was pregnant, and she wanted to work among batteries where there was lead and a number of other potential issues that could affect pregnancy. And that case, called the Johnson Controls case, went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court basically said, employers, you can't make that decision for your employees. That's their decision. If they're qualified for the job and they want to do that job, even if there's a risk to that job, they are entitled to do it. And that case is still good law. Nothing's changed about that. So the idea that you can tell someone, I'm not letting you travel to Brazil because you're pregnant, you are going to get more risk out of that legally than you will out of any situation involving the Zika situation. Again, education's okay, but try not to go farther than that. And then lastly, an employee refused to perform his or her job because of travel or because of concerns about Zika. And the answer is they can't really. There is an OSHA standard. I've got it set forth in number 14 here. The standard is an employee is allowed to refuse to work, but only where there is an objectively reasonable belief that there is a chance of imminent death or serious injury. We don't have that here. That said, if a pregnant employee is supposed to travel for you and realizes that the travel is to Honduras, Honduras is one of the countries in question, and they push back and say, I'd rather not make that trip, I think you need to evaluate your risk on that. I have the opinion that sometimes discretion is a better part of valor, and there are some requests like that, but I think they're not worth going down the path of. And if you want to work with the person, that's one thing. We live in a really electronic world. There may be ways to hook that person up with meetings via a variety of tools, from Skype to more sophisticated tools, and think about your alternatives before you get into a big match about that one. But that's about it for now. Hopefully that was helpful. And like I said, CDC site's good, OSHA site is good, World Health Organization, WHO, is also a very good site to go to. And otherwise, hopefully this PowerPoint and this presentation will give you some insights. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Gavin. That was a lot of great information. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If any of you have any more questions on any employment law matters, you can contact IAML at iaml.com. Thanks again, Gavin.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Take it easy.